you told me a couple of minutes ago that none of you know any Polish, and yet you were able to make sense of this text. How? How is that possible?
By context.
Using context.
Visual
okay.
context.
Okay, so we use the knowledge of what kind of text it is to then make further inferences about what might be in it. Yeah? Okay. How else? What other bits of information did you use to make sense of the text?
The written context. Similarity between the...
Cognates.
We were connecting. We were connecting our background to what we are seeing here, because some words are written differently, but if you pronounce them, you feel like, oh, they look like the ones I know.
Exactly. So we're using the linguistic knowledge that we already have. We don't know Francia and Portugalia, but we know France and Portugal. We know those words. Yeah. We also, so we've got language cognates, language knowledge that we already have is helping us build more knowledge. But we also have real-world knowledge. Yeah. We not only know that Francia and Portugalia are France and Portugal, we know that those things are countries. Kathy knew that Capri is an island in Italy, so that helped us get Włochy, which is completely not a cognate. It looks nothing like the word Italy. And yet we could still make sense of it. So we're bringing language knowledge, and we're bringing real-world knowledge, and we're putting those together, and we're bringing contextual knowledge. And a combination of those things allows us to make sense of this text. So what I hope is clear from this activity is that you don't need to know all of the words in a text in order to be able to use it in the classroom. That we can encourage the learners, and this is exactly what I meant by active reading. We can encourage the learners to draw on the resources that they already have inside them, language resources, real-world resources, contextual resources, to bring those together and say, using all that you already have, how then can you make sense of this text? And what this tells us is that we don't have to always worry about whether learners whether they already know every word in a text. What we're doing is one of the very, very basic principles of using materials, which is vary the task, not just the text. This is something that David Noonan said, and it is very true. If we pick the right task, the learners will be capable of engaging with the text. And lastly, notice that we also, on the way, picked up a certain amount of cultural information. We know how dates are written in Polish. We're learning how you write addresses and all kinds of things like that. All right, so this is a basic demonstration which I hope will convince you that we can in fact use different levels of texts in different ways in the classroom. To sum up, we have seen how the entire reading process is a process that is creative and interactive, as well as putting information in the brain creates its own information. We've seen how we can draw on our knowledge of context, our existing knowledge of language, and our existing knowledge of the world to make sense of texts. We've seen how we can use different kinds of texts with different kinds of tasks, and we don't need to worry about whether the learners know every single word in the text already. And we've seen how this individual response to language and texts is, far from being a problem, is actually a very rich resource for us as teachers in terms of how a written text can then generate spoken or written language.